increases taxpayer funding for private unaccountable schools, while again failing to invest in our K-12 public school children who are still suffering from the record cuts from just a few years ago. Other states all around us are investing in public education, and we are falling behind. We know that in order to build a 21st century economy, we need a strong public education system. I mentioned that Minnesota, a $2 billion budget surplus. You know what they're doing with all of it? Public education. Wow, they're investing in public education, a real good investment. Governor Walker is among only a handful of governors proposing these kinds of cuts. We need a budget that creates economic opportunities for Wisconsin families. We need to match worker skills to jobs of today and tomorrow. We need to give our kids the opportunity to access the education and training that they need to succeed and compete in a 21st century economy. So, what can you do? Well, this is where, I riled you up, made you shake your head, some of you put your head in your hand, all very appropriate. Well, what can you do? You got to get a hold of your legislators. And not just the ones like that don't agree with you, you figure they won't. You write me a letter if I'm in your district. Because that gives me the ability to say, I've gotten 100 letters that this needs to be taken out. So if you don't write me, you don't have that. You may already, and yes, a lot of this stuff, you're the preacher, I'm the choir, and you're right, I'm probably there in a lot of these things. But you should be putting it down. A lot of you do as you look in the crowd, you're already there, but you have to urge others to do that. But then on the other token, on this side of the token, there are some legislators that don't get back to people. I heard it was Health and Human Services Day today, and from one of the counties that I serve, the director of families and Health and Human Services, she said she called one of my colleagues 6 times and never got an answer. Never got an answer. And my staff was there and said, well, Andy, if we didn't get somebody back with one phone call, you would have had her had. And we would have had a talk. I don't know if I got mad, but it's incredible to me. But I hear people say, I'm not going to call my representative. He or she doesn't care what I have to say. Well, you know what? They win then. You're helping them out. You just did what they hoped you would do. And I've heard them say this too. When something's important to me and I'm bellowing away on the floor of the assembly, there are times they'll go, I haven't gotten one letter on what you're talking about. Not one. And I think to myself, wow. But the reason is because people have given up are frustrated and they give up on doing what they're supposed to. And what you're supposed to be doing is getting to know your legislator. And if they don't want to get to know you, there are things you can still do about that. You can say, well, you come and meet me for a cup of coffee. Perhaps they say no. Maybe you write them a letter. They don't get back to you. Maybe you write them an email. They don't get back to you. Maybe you try to call them at their office. They don't call you back. There's all kinds of things you can do about that. You can write a letter to the editor now and say, and in this case that I just gave you, I've written my representative 6 times and I have not heard an answer. That statement right there cuts both ways. Whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, and you learn that about somebody that's got the honor and privilege of doing my job and working in the Capitol, and they're not doing their job, that weighs heavy on a lot of people. And so if you do it and another person does it, and soon that's how they're known, they'll be gone. I do have to believe that that's what will happen. So back to what I'm asking you to do. Write your letters. I think what would be a good thing is if somebody wrote you back, that you come to a forum like this and ask Chuck, hey, I got an answer from one of our representatives on one of my questions. Could I read it to people? I bet you he says yes. And you should know what they're saying in response to what you might share the same concern that someone else does, and see what they're hearing when they get a hold of who represents them. So that's what you need to do. You have to you have to write your representative, your senator, and your governor. And I think your response, if you get one, if you don't get one, I think you should share that information with others and let them know. Well, here's what Governor Walker said when I told him not to cut those scientists in the DNR. He said, I think it'd be interesting, I'd love to hear it, what he says in response to you. So maybe that's something you'd fit into a group like this. what responses you get. You can have some sort of award or something, Chuck. There's people who have gotten the most letters on getting something back from the people who represent you. And that's exactly what I do. I am your voice. And if you can't get a hold of me, then there's something wrong. And we have a great system where every 2 years I got to come and ask for your vote. And if you haven't been getting back to you, I don't think you're going to vote for me. And then I should have to leave. So that's how it's supposed to work. But when we're high-fiving yesterday's election was 18% in our county, that's not good. It's not working. We got to get that number where it should be, at least over the 50% mark. But it goes also to writing letters on some of the things that are important to you, or contacting your representative in some way, shape, or form. Getting to know them is a big, big deal. And many of you already know me, and that's the way it's supposed to work. But you got to get to know those others too that maybe you already figured out you'll disagree with. Still get a hold of them. You have to. Our future depends on it. So I've gone a long time. I don't even know how long. Was it an hour?
That was a bit long.
Wow.
Speaking of asking questions of your representative, I think it's these guys' turn.
Yes.
They'll have questions to raise them.
Yes.
It seems to me, I need a little memory jog, but when Mr. Walker ran the first time, didn't he say, accuse Mr. Doyle of kicking the can down the road and building up all this debt for our children and grandchildren? So what's this item here where it says puts 1.3 billion in transportation spending on the state's credit card? He's doing the same thing. I think that's a good thing to write the letters to the editor about.
Right. And I think it's even worse what he's doing. The governor, oh yeah. You want to speak on this?
I just want to make a point that one of the first things he did as governor of transportation was appoint a blue ribbon commission, which was primarily Republican appointees, to review transportation funding and give them some long-term transportation stuff. They came back with stuff like toll roads, raising the registration fee, indexing the gas tax again, and he promptly proceeded to take Secretary Gottlieb, who is a good Republican, and put him on the nearest tree in a lynch mob and throw the whole thing out the window. So if you expect anything positive to happen in transportation except borrowing and making the road builders happy, you gotta wait until at least 2017 to get another governor in there.
Yeah, there was that commission that you speak of, and it was was filled with ideas, and they did their best. They worked hard on it. They went out and they tried to find the viability, the want, the will of doing some of this stuff. Made a nice report, and yeah, it must have been crumpled up and thrown away because putting it all on the credit card. Yes.
So why do you think the people of Wisconsin keep electing these people?
Well, another word for you, gerrymandering. Because right after they did the last round of gerrymandering, in my house, there was over 200,000 people that voted for a Democratic candidate for assembly, but yet we lost more seats on top of it. Chuck talked a little bit about my introduction. The seat that I had was chopped in 4 different pieces, and it was done strategically so that they could get a few more seats out of the one seat I had.
But even those people in those Republican districts have to start thinking, this isn't good for us.
Well, you would think that, but you know, on the Republican side, they have a lot of tools. I don't like using that word anymore, but they have a lot more tools than we have. For instance, you know, they've got a lot more radio stations with conservative talk show hosts. And I come from radio. That's powerful stuff. To just embolden some of these ideas, to repeat things, to be on some sort of an agenda, and be able to talk to the people that listen to them, to say, well, Andy Jorgensen was in Janesville last night. Don't listen to him. Here's what really, he's just saying his side of the coin. You know, we don't have that. They have all of those tools, if you will, on their side. And that's what helps a lot of this stay right where it is.
So it's education.
Yeah.
We do have Sly, by the way. He came and talked about right to work.
Right. We do have Sly. They have a lot more. Yes?
I just think there's so much stuff happening so fast that people don't keep track of it, they're too lazy to. And so conservatives with their radio shows and how you just pick one little two things like guns and stuff, and they keep that in people's minds, and that's all people concentrate on.
Well,
They're too overwhelmed by everything that's happening, and so they say, well, I'm worried about the Democrats are people in the Congress and whatever, and that's it, that's all I worry about.
Very much so. No, you're exactly, speed has a lot to do with it. If you want something done up at the Capitol and you want it done and you don't want to get your sweater caught on the nail at the door, you want to get it going and you want it fast. And that's why you saw Act 10 was, what was that, proposed on a Friday and was hoped to get done the next Thursday. Right to work went very fast. We have a bill that's up now, whether you like it or not. Some people do. Democrats are on the bill. But this Uber bill was introduced, I think, last week, had 2 days to sign on. And on last week, Wednesday, it had its hearings in both houses. Today, it was voted on in exec, and it's going to be on the floor next week. That's fast. And that's a bill that they want to get done right away because who knows? Maybe there's some things they don't want to come out. I don't know what it would be, but in my mind, why are you doing it so fast? How about this? Why not try and get it right rather than just get it done? But that's not the case. But when you've got people supporting a bill, they want it done fast too. They want to get it done. That's their job, to shepherd it through and tell the people that they work for, got her done. It's my job. Yep.
I got 4 questions. First of all, I'd like a suggestion that you could bring up to these people. If, in contacting legislators, okay, you get a lot of mail, you're counting numbers, how many pieces of mail come in. How do you capture their attention? Put a penny in the envelope and hang a string on it and say, this is a penny for my thoughts? Just something to make you different so they read it or pay attention to it. You can't do that with an email. But maybe there's some other ways that they can capture their attention, because that's what the Republicans do when they market stuff. I mean, Paul Ryan is a perfect example of a marketed product. I went to a training class that Paul Ryan, campaign manager, the first one he had, he told us, he said, I sold him as a product. And he proceeded to go to all the different people that he had sold who were conservatives that were a product. Like a guy milking a cow and pulling a calf out, that was a product. Strange things they do. Now, that was one thing. Rob and I belong to ARDC. We're on their board. And I don't know how many people in this room have ever heard of ARDC, Aging Disability Resources Corporation. Anyhow, you know the words. I got them tangled up. What we wanted to do is to capture your attention on voting on this is a necessity. If you're a senior, there has been no program put out there that's the funnel that this one is. It takes people by issue, by issue, by issue, and they're gathering the information. They are trying to help people. And maybe you don't ask the right questions the first time, but somebody is going to get a hold of you and make sure that you get help. And we want to make sure that program doesn't get cut off. Another part of that is the boards. All nonprofits have boards. And like you say, there can be a lot of mischief with the board. You need to have someone on that board that has accounting experience, someone that has legal experience. Those type of people, as stuff is brought up, they can say, this makes sense, or maybe there's a problem with that, in the accounting or in the law, you can't go that direction. But at least you're going to get help doing the right thing for the people that really need it. Next thing, senior care. I'm a perfect example of it. I pay a $1,700 deductible. Okay? I got $100 back in my property taxes. Now I'm going to have to pay another $700 plus the deductible. So we're going to be up to $2,700 by the time I get any help. And shortly thereafter will be the donut hole. So theoretically, I could go bankrupt if I wasn't resourceful enough to go out and go to companies and get them to send me the medications for free. And it's not easy because my income is right on the fulcrum there. But all you can do is have persistence. I get free insulin, and I get free medication for nerves and for diabetics and that. And I can't remember the exact amount on the insulin, but it's over $300 a month for sure. And the other one is over $300 a month. So that's $600 a month, $7,200 a year. That's my average out-of-pocket expense on health care. So my phrase for Governor Walker is, ignorance is bliss, but stupidity, you can correct ignorance, but you can't correct stupidity, I guess is the way to phrase it. Now, the budget. That budget was a deficit budget when Tommy Thompson was governor. And how did he get there? The last term he was in office, he ran a bunch of stuff through because the economy looked good. The deficit gets passed to Doyle. Doyle can't get the job done because it's so deep. Then he comes to Walker, and Walker said, well, we'll solve that problem. Unfortunately, cutting the budget, you have to take, as you say, things out of the budget that are either it's not going to make a profit or and I should say, let's use the term profit, but not make sense, or get in there where is a service to a group of people who could take care of themselves. And that's one of the issues that I get upset about, is those people that are rich, well off, running a business, making a profit, and they want help. I can give you a perfect example of that, and I'll shut up. We had a program here in Rock County. The purpose of it was to help people get jobs. It was Teddy Kennedy's bill, where they basically trained people to be janitors, because that was an occupation that there were going to be a lot of need for. Well, the classes were held. These guys would be sent out, and they would be getting reduced rate for the employer. So the employer would hire these people, and it was like a 12-week program. At the end of that 12 weeks, that same group of people would then be sent somewhere else to help another employer cut his costs because he could get these people instead of training another 12 people. And that's just a total waste of money. But the person who was running the program, she looked good because she had 100%. Every time they set up another program for another 12 or 13 weeks, she had 100% of their quota. So I'm shutting up.
All right, well, you raised some good things. Getting a hold of your legislator, I don't know what the trick is. I want to find out what the trick is getting a hold of our friends and neighbors and getting them on board and getting these changes to get done. And there's got to be, that's a trick I'm trying to seek out right now. We got to make rooms like this grow. We got to get more people to get engaged with having a relationship with their representative or their senator. And then we'll find out how to get their attention. But there's a lot of ways. I don't have that problem. You send me a letter. I mean, I'm told at least once a week, you're who? You're calling me? Why? I sent you a letter. I didn't expect you to call me. I do. Because when I call someone, I learn more about what's on their mind. I'm a better representative as a result. Yes.
I know one concern I see in Janesville is we have 7 city council members that are voted at large. We have 28 wards, but we don't have ward supervisors. And if the 28 ward supervisors, that's 1,000 households each had 10 block captains. You would add 2,000 people with elected positions in the city of Janesville so they can get the word out and get information in. But we're bottlenecked. We got 7 generals and everybody else is privates, and you don't get the information. And it's a huge concern. And then if the first position you can run for in Janesville is a city council person, but you don't get paid and you have to campaign the entire city, that's 28,000 households. And technically, that's a $50,000 budget if you're going to do it properly. And then and if we had 28 ward supervisors, we could do a hand count of ballots every election, because out of 1,000 households, if a third of them showed up at the polls, that's 300 ballots each ward supervisor would be counting. And so I don't trust those machines any farther than I can spit. They crash every single vote day.
Well, one of the things you may want to do is bring that up to a city council. I know a few people
The
that
city
say,
council members are fine with the way it is. They don't want more input. They don't want people interfering.
Well, that's a shame.
With $20 million they borrowed to pay for Shine to come into the community. Shine's technology is already outdated. They haven't even broke ground yet. And they want to use uranium war weapons-grade uranium to make isotopes. Their competitor, who's already broke ground in Beloit, has a more progressive technology. I mean, they're well-heeled, they're the Shark Tank, man, spending our money like
Well,
sailors.
maybe you should invite some of them to this meeting
They
and get
don't
that conversation.
care. Okay, well, here's one
Well-
thought. One thought is there any way we could get a citizen defense attorney, a corporate litigation attorney that would take them to court every single time they jack us around, single time they, they do things illegal every single city council meeting. And we have no representation. Our city attorney's office brags that they got a blank check to squash citizens. We have city employees that aggressively retaliate. I had a grease fire on my rentals. They wanted to do a search without a warrant from the basement to the attic without honoring the grandfather clause. So they did, it's in a TIF district, and that's how they get rid of houses in the TIF district. So they aren't staying in their domain, it's regulatory taking. So.
Well, hey, go ahead.
I'm sorry, yeah.
We're running low on time,
Yeah.
so.
I just,
Thank you.
my question is, with Walker and putting this incredible budget together, is it like transparency, and who's he consulting with? Obviously, he doesn't seem to be reaching out to all of these things he's taking from or doing. Is that something that people are aware of? I mean, obviously, I don't think he's coming up with all this himself, or is there anything on that?
That's a good question, because generally you would say he would be getting it from his secretaries. But give you an example, is she didn't even know what was going on. So I don't know. There's a clear agenda going on in many Republican-controlled states. All you need to do is look around. What happened in Indiana, and you saw it in Arkansas. Now Governor Schneider is backing away from his. They all have these different bills like that one that was in Indiana. Guess what? We had one yet last year. It never went anywhere, but somebody went and wrote it and got co-sponsors on it. And so it could happen here. I mean, so there's some, and a lot of it has to do with their think tanks. One that many people refer to as the ALEC think tank. That's where a lot of this comes from. A real warped way of getting legislation. Having corporations or representatives of corporations in the same room as legislators and voting on what will be the agenda going forward for all these states. That's not the way to do it. The way to do it, the only way I know how to do it, and I will not change, is listening to people that I serve. That's why there's 99 of us in our house. So we can have all these different ideas that come from every part of our state. In fact, we could even have 99 different points of view on anything that's before us. Wouldn't that be something? But instead, it always seems to fall down on the two sides, Republican versus Democrat. And that's all we ever hear, is that, and that's not the way we're designed to work. We should, so I don't know how to answer your question, other than look around and try to figure it out yourself. Gosh, Michigan's doing almost the same thing we are, or Indiana's doing a lot of the same things we are. So maybe that, if you put all that together, and you'll find out who a lot of all these states are listening to. All right.